All right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on what part of the world you are in. My name is Jordy Berrianuevo. I am the health insurance guy, or the health insurance dad. We rebranded ourselves now. But pretty much, guys, we do these podcasts to bring different business categories, different business owners, and different businesses from all parts of the world to pretty much, for you guys, right? So you guys can get to know them, so you guys can get to like them, so you guys can get to trust them, right? So, I mean, we've had different types of categories from doctors to attorneys to marketers. Today, we're going to be bringing on a physical therapist. His name is Mark Blank. He's going to have a lot of information to share with you guys about, when you should see a physical therapist, why you should see a physical therapist, and things like that. So let me go ahead and bring him on. Mr. Mark Blank, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for coming on this broadcast. Like I was just saying, people can benefit from seeing business owners jump on here because hey, the reality is, like I said, we do business with people we know, like, and trust, right? So the
Sure.
first question I always, ask my guest is, why did you choose to be a physical therapist?
Well, and you might get this answer sometimes, and I think it kind of shows me. I was an athlete early on growing up, and which ultimately led me to injury, which ultimately took me to physical therapy, which just one step after another. Silver lining, here we are.
Nice, nice. So how long have you been in the field now?
I have been a physical therapist for the summer will be 10 years. I was an athletic trainer for
Wow,
about 4 years before that as well.
wow,
Yeah, still going.
nice. And you played sports, you said?
I did.
Nice. What'd you play?
I did. I was a power lifter, which is what ultimately got me in the most trouble. And then I played football and I wrestled as well in high school. The lifting is what got me into extended into college, which is ultimately what did me in. But like I said, it got me to physical therapy. Fortunately, I had a really good physical therapist, and that was also early in college when I was trying to figure out what do I want to be when I grow up, and it kind of just unfolded from there. And like I said, here we are.
That's crazy how life works, right? Like
Uh,
you get hurt and you just kind of like, hey, you know what? I can help people here.
right.
Cool, cool. So, you became a physical therapist about 10 years ago, you said?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what's the difference from a physical therapist and a chiropractor?
What I've come to learn to realize is that there's a lot actually. There's a lot of physical therapists and a lot of chiropractors. I've worked with tons of physical therapists. I've worked with quite a few chiropractors as well, and there's actually a lot of overlap and similarity. What I've learned in the few that are really good at both. I work with a couple really good chiropractors as well as physical therapists, and we treat a lot of things very similarly. There's some different approaches and different backgrounds that we do. You're the stereotype, the traditional chiropractors is one that might just adjust you and that's it. And the traditional the stereotypical physical therapist just gives you a bunch of exercises, walks away for 20 minutes, says, I'll be back. And you're kind of on your own and then they may never put a hand on you. And so what I've come to realize is the really good ones do some kind of combination of both with good hands-on skilled manual therapy techniques, as well as injury and sport specific therapeutic exercise that are, it's not just cookie cutter treatment. It's tailored specifically to your injury and to that person to best reach their goals and return to their prior level of function.
Nice. Now, how do you pick a specific treatment for each individual?
It all depends. People come in with a diagnosis, on a prescription from their doctor, but one diagnosis of low back pain is not the same as the next diagnosis of low back pain or
Mhm.
muscle strain or whatever it might be. So basically, what we do is when patients come in, I do a thorough evaluation and examination, really good history, sitting there and actually listening to your patient, which is Silly, because most people don't take the time to do that. And what I always tell, I tell students of mine is if you let your patient talk long enough, they'll tell you what's wrong with them. And so that's kind of the foundation of kind of figuring out exactly what's going on, and then using those clues and details to conduct a very specific, detailed evaluation to try to confirm or move in a different direction based on what you're trying to find. And it's through those findings, through the evaluation, is how we tailor our treatment to address those symptoms. As physical therapists, it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but I don't treat pain. I treat dysfunction, which often is what causes pain. So
What's the difference?
Dysfunction is what's actually limiting you, physically limiting you, whether it's mobility, range of motion deficits, muscle weakness, any neurological deficits, balance issues, whatever it may be. It's physically limiting you from doing a specific task, your job, your sport, whatever it is. And it's those specific limitations that are going to guide our treatments. We're going to treat the symptoms, not a diagnosis. I don't treat a diagnosis because, like I said, 10 people can have the exact same diagnosis. 10 people can have the same MRI findings, but they could all have completely different symptoms. So we want to treat the symptoms and instead of just a diagnosis.
Nice. And what kind of like how long can a customer typically expect to be in physical therapy? Is that something that you kind of know on the spot, or
yeah, it also depends. And again, everybody's different. And that's what I tell everybody day one. Listen, everyone's different. And usually that's one of the most common questions I get is how long is it going to take to be fixed? And what I tell people is, listen, based on experience, based on your findings, based on these types of issues, typically, we might be able to expect a time frame of whether it's, a few visits or a few weeks or a few months, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, everyone's different. I have people that come in with a minor issue that might take a little bit longer to get them to 100%. I have people that come in that can barely move that, 2 days later, they're like, I don't know what happened, but it's a miracle, and it's not a miracle. It's just, we're helping the body do its job and help heal itself. And that's where we come in to try to help speed that process up and select the specific things that help them do that most effectively.
Yeah. Do you think food sometimes has something to do with that as well?
Food?
Like, do you ever like consider it in a treatment plan?
Absolutely. No? Nutrition is, and I sometimes I get questions about nutrition as well. And I'm not a nutritionist.
Yeah, of course.
I do have some background as a physical therapist, but it's minor. So, I don't try to ever step out of my scope. But yeah, listen.
Like, does it have any correlation in your expert opinion?
It depends. With an acute injury, probably not. But with certain types of chronic issues, for instance, I see a lot of people that have osteoarthritis, whether it's of their knees, the hip, any joint, which sometimes they're maybe not in the best of shape, and they might be a little bit more heavy set, and that added weight on them could be the cause, or maybe it's not the cause, but it's certainly not helping. For every 10 pounds of body weight, it's just that much more stress on our joints. So that alone can create or at least exacerbate some conditions like osteoarthritis, arthritis of the knee. So in that aspect, nutrition is a huge, probably one of the main courses of action that someone might need to take, because we can work on that knee, for instance, and we can do some range of motion stuff. We can do some strengthening, and that might help. But at the end of the day, if they still have that added 60, 70 plus pounds on that knee, it's always going to be swimming against the current. So a lot of people will say, well, I know I need to lose weight, but I can't lose weight because I can't exercise because I'm in pain. And it's kind of like a catch-22. And so, we try to minimize that pain and strengthen them as best as we can in that process to allow them to be able to do a little bit more, so that they can kind of go hand in hand and they can lose some weight, which is ultimately what's going to be the biggest long-term benefit to that type of condition. So certain conditions, absolutely, food and nutrition can play a huge role.
That makes sense. Now, how long is each visit usually, like when they come to your office?
Sure. Everyone has an hour. So I have an hour. Some
Okay,
people don't need
nice.
quite an hour. Every now and then I have someone longer than an hour. It's kind of I like to do my treatment based on necessity. So I'm going to give you the necessary treatment, regardless of how long that takes, whether it's a little bit less, a little bit more. But typically, everyone typically gets about an hour.
Nice. And do you guys do like strictly like hands, or do you have machines, or a little bit of both?
Both. So
Both.
one of the bigger differences between me and a lot of the other clinics, especially some of the bigger corporate owned clinics,
Yeah.
where it's kind of more of the mill, where they kind of don't have a choice with some of the insurances that they're taking, and with reimbursement the way it is, sometimes that they have to see 3-4 patients at a time per
Hmm.
therapist.
Yeah.
So it's hard when in the first half of my career I worked at one of those big busy mill clinics. It doesn't mean that there's bad physical therapists there. I
Hmm.
used to think I used to still be a good one.
Hmm.
However, I'm balancing 3 patients at a time. I only have so much time to be hands-on. So that's something that I definitely do a lot of. I have my additional manual therapy certification, as well as several other hands-on certifications. I do trigger point dry needling, and then cupping, grafting, some of the other manual techniques that maybe a lot of people might have heard of or are familiar with. So I spend a lot of time with my hands-on patients. I typically like to do, when patients first start, I'm doing a little bit more manual, more hands-on, with kind of starting with some basic
Hmm.
exercises. And over time, the idea is that we can start to do this, is that they don't need as much as the hands-on, and we're building up a more of a protocol and a regimen for them to be able to be discharged with and continue to do on their own. So once we get them to their goals, they can maintain the progress that they've had. So I do a lot of hands-on treatment. Usually it's about half and half on average. So 20-30 minutes of hands-on manual therapy, and then we'll reinforce what we do manually with the appropriate exercises, so that everything we loosen up we can strengthen, so we can keep that mobility, so it doesn't just revert right back to where it was.
Nice, nice. And how many times a week do you usually recommend for somebody to come in? Or again,
Again,
is that a
it's
per
all
person basis?
dependent on their issue. I have people with all different frequencies. Typically, most people that come in to at least start with, we generically, you'll see frequently like 2 or 3 times a week. We want to be consistent at the beginning. Consistency is key.
Hmm.
Sometimes with people, I don't really have the time, or maybe they might miss certain appointments. If you don't have the consistency, you're not going to nearly as much effective outcomes, or as quick outcomes as possible. So we want to stay on top of that issue, at least early on. Sometimes I'll have people come in 2 or 3 times a week for the first few weeks, and then we taper it down. And then some people I have that they're on more of a maintenance, where they come in once every other week. I have people that come in just once a month for some just routine, dry needling, or certain other manual type stuff. Some athletes that just are trying to stay on top of their issues, so they want to prevent it from coming back.
Now, can we talk about some of those procedures that you do?
Sure.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know anything about physical therapy, so I mean, you
Sure.
could just go ahead. Go ahead.
So, the main tools that I use are my hands, obviously.
Okay.
So, we do a lot of different soft tissue type of techniques, soft tissue mobilizations, as well as joint mobilization and manipulations. So it depends on what the issue is. Our main focus is to promote tissue healing, or joint healing, increase circulation to help that healing process speed up, increase mobility, and ultimately will end up decreasing pain and decreasing restriction. So, depending on what the issue is, more muscle, then it's going to be just more kind of different massage therapy techniques, versus more of a joint issue is going to be more joint mobilization type stuff. So that's going to be step one. And then we have several other different types of things that we do frequently. I use, it's called Graston, which is basically a instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization tool, which is basically, you may have seen it. They're different shapes that comes in a kit. that we use for different body parts, but it's a metal tool that's angled in a certain way that can really kind of get in to the surface of the skin and break through some soft tissue, some scar adhesions, and really loosen up the muscle and help promote some tissue healing. I do cupping as well, which more or less basically is like it sounds. It's suction cupping,
Yeah.
kind of the first couple superficial layers of skin and tissue away from the deeper layers of tissue, and it's creating more space in between the layers, which allows more blood to flow. So it's good for healing, good for loosening up the fascia, and promote increased mobility. Another one that we've done as trigger point dry needling, which is, a lot of people ask, is that like acupuncture? And it's not acupuncture at all. The only similarity to acupuncture is that we use the same needles. Otherwise, we don't deal with acupuncture is a whole nother animal. It's a whole, I can't speak behind it. That's not my background. That deals with the meridian lines and energy lines and a full systemic type of thing. That's way more detailed and extensive. The dry needling is we're targeting specific structures, whether it be the muscle, the tendon, the ligament, the joint, and we're just putting the needle directly into those structures. And what the needle's doing is it's creating a little bit of micro trauma, which induces a further healing response. It also breaks through some adhesions and loosen up some tissue as well. And we have a lot of really good results with that.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, the needle, it always
Yeah.
like
People get very
I can
nervous.
do
The needles,
anything.
they're thin. You can bend them in half without breaking them. That's how thin they are. For
Wow.
the most part, majority of the time, people can't even tell that they're in them. Even ones that go in what they seem to be deep, there a lot of times you won't even know that they're there. I ask people, are like, when are you going to do it? I'm like, the needle's been in you for 2 minutes. What are you talking about? So it's really not nearly as bad as people assume it is. And again, we get a lot of good outcomes and success with it.
Now, how do you know when somebody might need joint healing versus tissue healing?
Yeah, again, that's going to be all part of our evaluation and an initial exam. We have different special tests. We typically, I'll typically test for everything, whether depending on the body part or the issue that they're coming in for. We're going to look at joint mobility. We're going to look at soft tissue mobility, range of motion. We're going to test strength. We're going to test neurological things if we need.
Oh, so you're gonna make me stretch.
We might have to stretch. We might have to loosen some things up. But ultimately, we want to see that won't be the stretching part yet. That's just going to be seeing how much available range of motion that you have and comparing bilaterally, comparing to the other side. That's how we're going to notice if there's restrictions or limitations. And that's what's going to guide our treatment, is based on what we find versus, the joint assessments versus the soft tissue assessments versus any neurological assessments and whatever other special testing that we do to try to assess different structures in the body to see if they're damaged or injured.
Now, what kind of tests exactly are you talking about? Is there you're gonna pull my leg all the way back, like those type of tests?
Yeah, again, it depends on the body part. So we have different special tests. These are usually tests that have some form of research behind them.
Okay.
Any one test in and of itself is not very sound evidence that there's an issue there. But we usually have clusters of different tests. So we have a group. For instance, if it's a rotator cuff issue, we have different maneuvers and tests that we can put the shoulder in to see if there's any pain or any weakness, which will, in a combination with several tests together, will let us know and pinpoint if there's a rotator cuff issue versus is it a joint in a labral tear type of issue, or is it just one of the other muscles? Those are the different types of maneuvers. Again, we have different special tests for all different body parts, and not just different body parts, different structures within those different body parts to put stress on those structures to see what we find. And by, for instance, the knee, we can test the ligaments by assessing the integrity of the joint movement, and that's just all feel with our hands to see how much movement there may or may not be in that joint of the bones of the lower leg to where they connect to the bones of the upper leg, right? And that can let us know if there's any joint issues. It can let us know if there's any ligament issues. And then we have other tests that will assess the meniscus to see if we're compressing the meniscus, if that's flared up. So is it an ACL type of MCL issue versus is it just a meniscus issue versus is it just a muscle or issue with the kneecap? So there's all different tests and measures that we utilize to try to determine where the pain and restriction is coming from. And then again, that's what we're going to use to tailor our treatment.
Mark, that's so crazy. You actually brought up knee because like I love to run,
Mm-hmm.
but my knee like really kicks me out of running like a lot. You know what I mean? Like I love to run the 5 miles a day and things like that, which isn't as much as most professional runners I know. But still, I enjoy it. But every time I might do a couple days or like the knee always bothers me. So pretty much you're saying somebody with knee problems can come in and you can actually figure out what's going on and there's actually a fix to it.
Yeah, but majority of the time, yes. So for instance, someone with your exact type of history, right, will come in and we'll take a look at everything and we'll assess all these structures of the knee and we'll try to determine, is it a ligament issue? Is it a meniscus issue? Is it a joint issue? Is it a muscle issue? Is it a biomechanical dysfunction that your kneecap is not gliding the appropriate way and you're getting some bone on bone grinding?
Do you do x-rays or something to figure this out? Or just
We do not.
mobility test?
Nope. As a physical therapist, we don't prescribe or
Okay,
order any radiographs, X-rays,
got
or
it.
MRIs. So typically, what we'll do is we'll do the assessment and we'll do some treatment. If our evaluation gives us any types of red flags that we're if we're suspecting something like a fracture or something a little like a complete rupture of a tendon or ligament,
Yeah,
which again is the purpose of our evaluation. Then we usually we call those red flags. When we have red flags, we'll usually stop and refer out. So if someone comes
got it.
in with having these red flags issues, I'm going to get them in with one of the doctors or orthopedics or whoever the appropriate referral source might be, and get that imaging done or a further assessment to see exactly the extent of the damage. When they're coming in, and we call them more just what we call yellow flags, and these are just kind of something that's worth noting, not something that's necessarily contraindicated to treat. We just kind of want to keep an eye on it. Then we can progress, depending
Yeah,
on what we find, progress with some treatment, and then we see how you react to the treatment.
yeah,
If obviously we're getting better and we just build off of that and we keep going. If we're not seeing a pretty quick positive response, or if we're seeing it, if everything I'm doing is only hurting and causing more pain, again, we're going to get you to the appropriate doctor, appropriate physician, and get some further testing done and see the extent of the damage. And then depending on what that finds is, now it's a team approach and we're all going to work together to see what the best next step will be.
got it, got it. Okay, now this might not be maybe your realm of expertise, but how do you feel about somebody, that runs like on concrete and things like that? Do you think that actually damages, your knees and that type of stuff? Like, do you think
Um,
concrete sports actually damage, you know, your legs or body parts?
Right. I don't know if I can speak on behalf of any solid research
Hmm.
that may be behind supporting, exactly there. We know just from common sense. I mean, obviously, the harder the surfaces, the more
Yeah,
compression on our joints. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
someone who's running on, concrete is maybe going is we know they're going to have less stress than someone who's running on a good track versus someone who's running on a treadmill. And then you have different types of treadmills. There's different gyms like Orange Theory. They have
yeah.
their treadmills are what's the term I'm looking for?
Yeah, it's just more stressful on
Yeah,
concrete.
yeah. Now, does that mean I can tell you that you running on concrete means that you're going to have more knee problems than
Yeah.
someone that's running on a nice soft treadmill? No,
Hmm.
there's no guarantee one way or the other.
Yeah.
We know again, like I said, the concrete. I have patients that they do trade shows and stand on concrete for 8 hours, and it destroys them just standing
Yeah.
on concrete versus standing on a nice, plush surface. That's going to be less strenuous on the knees. So, I treat a lot of runners. I work with the Wellington Runners Club, and so I get a lot of marathon runners. I get a lot of triathletes, so a lot of runners. Again, it all depends on what their issues are. A lot of runners, a common injury is tight IT bands and or a weak quad muscle. And those, a combination or either or of those two can cause what we call patellofemoral dysfunction, where the kneecap might be gliding in a not the correct biomechanical direction that it's supposed to be. Instead of just moving straight up and down in this nice groove, it's now shifting out to the side and grinding bone on bone and causing a knee issue. That's just one example of a common running issue that we see. But then we have good treatments for it. Working on that IT band to loosen it up and strengthening that quad muscle will restore those mechanics, so that pain will go away and they'll be able to run. Again, that's going to be more of a soft tissue issue as opposed to a joint issue. But yeah.
Nice. And what kind of athletes, I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but what kind of athletes do you mostly see in your practice or something like that?
Yeah, I really see a lot of everything. Obviously, being in Wellington, I treat a lot of equestrians. I see a lot of riders. I treat a lot of polo players as well. But I have a lot of high school athletes. I see a lot of golfers, a lot of tennis players. Like I said, a lot of runners and triathletes, a lot of cyclists. Really, you name it. I kind of see. I've got a patient on a competitive intramural co-ed football league right now. I've got a wrestler. We kind of see it all.
Okay.
So I really more specialize in not just sports and athletes. I see plenty. I have my joint replacements, but my clientele is just a more active clientele. That's what we're kind of geared a little bit more towards, as opposed to kind of your standard, outpatient physical therapy clinic. I don't see a lot of just general weakness. I don't see a lot of balance issues. We're geared more towards improving function to return to a specific task. It doesn't have to be a professional sport. It could be just being able to walk down, a mile loop after dinner every night, around the neighborhood, or whatever it may be. Most of my clients come in, they seek me out, not necessarily they haven't even seen their doctor yet. They don't have a prescription. They just come in because they have an issue, whether it's word of mouth or online or whatever it is. So I treat a lot of patients along those lines as well.
Okay, so you will see people that maybe don't have insurance either.
Yeah. I treat a lot of patients that either they don't have insurance or they don't have a prescription. A lot of Florida is a state law, is a Florida direct access law for physical therapists, which states that I can treat anybody for 30 days without a prescription from a medical doctor.
Oh, nice.
And probably the majority of my patients are coming without a prescription from a doctor, depending on the insurance. Some insurances will still pay, and some insurances won't pay without a prescription. Medicare, for instance, will not pay without you have to have a prescription for Medicare to reimburse for physical therapy. A lot of the private insurances don't require a prescription. So it really just all depends. That's something that obviously we look at is when we get all the patient's insurance information. When we get the information back, we'll be able to see, exactly what's covered or what's not covered. If there's a prescription that's required, if there's authorization that's required, we get all the information back.
Nice. Now, when I come into the office, who will I see?
You will see the first person you'll see is Maddie. She's my office manager. She does all the scheduling. She answers the phones most of the time. Sometimes I'll jump in there too. In this clinic, we have 2 locations that we bounce back and forth between.
Nice.
And I have another physical therapist, Dak, as well. So you'll see either myself or Dak, and that's it. We don't have we don't have assistants, PTAs that do any of our treatments. It's both of us.
Nice.
Dak is a former collegiate wrestler, so he's got a sports background as well. I didn't make it to, being my 5'7", didn't quite make it to the NFL. But I did as an athletic trainer work in the NFL. So we
Oh
both have
wow.
a pretty dynamic background in sports. That's really helped us be able to kind of gear the clinic and our approach to where we have it.
Nice. Now, what do you expect from your clients when they start treatment with you?
First and foremost, I expect them to want to get better. And again, that's kind of piggybacking off what we said earlier. Majority of clinics, you'll have, most of the patients do come with a prescription, and sometimes patients come just because their doctor told them to, or because their significant other or mother, father, son, daughter told them that, hey, I think you need this. And, sometimes we'll see that patient that's not motivated and kind of
Yeah.
they don't necessarily really want to be here.
Hmm.
We don't really see that here. I don't really see that anymore, being how the way we are. But so most of my patients, I expect them to have an issue and a goal, a task, a goal that they want to achieve, and that's what we're here to do, is help them achieve that.
Nice. Now, what's been the biggest challenge you're facing in your business right now, and how are you tackling it?
Our biggest challenge, I think, which is really just obviously across healthcare, obviously,
Yeah.
is insurance. I don't have to tell you that. That's your your bread and butter.
Yeah.
It's just with reimbursement. The cut all the different cuts with Medicare and the way things have gotten. That's unfortunately that's kind of forces some of these corporate clinics or these other clinics to get swallowed up by these corporate clinics. And now when you walk in, you see this high volume, right? You see one physical therapist and the rest of the therapists are assistants, or just constantly being bounced to a different therapist every treatment session. 3, 4 patients per therapist at a time. These are the things that we commonly see. And it's not that I get it. I understand why those places have to do the way they have to do it. It's the only way they can be profitable at the end of the day. We all choose the fields we choose, and a lot of healthcare, hopefully most people do it because they want to help people and they want to provide good service. But at the end of the day, we got to keep the doors open too. So that's unfortunately what they have to do to make a profit. With how we do it, we see less patients. We're out of network with with some of the insurances. So a lot of my patients are, either paying cash or depending on their benefits, their out of network benefits. A lot of people, and again, it's probably something I don't have to tell you about.
Yeah.
People often don't have any idea what their out of network benefits are because we rarely use them because we figure,
Yeah.
would I? But
Yeah.
some people actually surprisingly have really good out of network benefits. So they're
Yeah.
and are still covered. So probably about half of my patients are cash, and the other half are still insurance. And
Nice.
that allows us to not have to see as many patients. So when you do come in, you are
Nice.
getting that one-on-one, hands-on, skilled therapy, and not just the run-of-the-mill. Here's your exercises, same exercises as everybody else. I'll be back in 10. We're just going to put some ice and electric stim on you, walk away again, call it a day, and that's your physical therapy. And to me, that's very lazy and non-effective physical therapy.
It's so crazy you say that because like everybody wants that personalized approach, but sometimes businesses grow, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, do I just like not grow my business and keep that personal touch? Trust me, like I'm dealing with it myself, growing as a health insurance agent, it's like, okay, you need to start bringing on more people. And the reality is sometimes it does, get out of hand to where you can't get to everybody personally.
Yeah. To me, that was, I just brought Dak on about a month ago.
Hmm.
And that was hard to find, not just because wasn't just
Yeah, I
because it was hard
remember.
to find a physical therapist. It was hard to find someone who was really good, someone
Hmm.
with the right background, someone with the right personality, someone with the right skill set,
Hmm.
which is what he has. Because to me, I know everything that I do, And
Hmm.
the last thing I wanted to do was just to bring in another run-of-the-mill physical therapist that wasn't going to do the same things, and then patients weren't going to want to see that person. They were only going to
Hmm.
want to see me, or they were going to be upset because they didn't feel like the continuity of care was consistent. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm very fortunate that I've found Dak as well, because we do a lot of the same. He's certified to do dry needling as well. That's something I do a lot
Nice.
of with my patients, and people come find me specifically for that as well. So we kind of keep our treatments consistent, and we co-treat. We treat together.
Nice.
We have an big open room, so all the patients really get to know both of us. But not in the sense that we pass them off to each other and just never talk to them again. You're going to
Yeah.
end up talking to both of us every time you come in.
Nice.
So that's kind of the difference. So that we make sure that that continuity of care is consistent.
Oh, that's cool. Do you guys have any like in your field like continuing education type of deal? How
Mhm.
often is
Yep.
that?
We have to do a certain amount of hours every 2 years, similar to a lot of other
Yeah.
medical fields. So,
Yep. Yep.
it all depends on for me personally. I'm a lifetime learner, so when I do my continuing education, it's usually towards some type of certification,
Hmm.
as opposed to some other people. It's every 2 years. So it's I believe November 30th of the second year is when it
Yeah.
expires. So you have a lot of people that first second week of November are going online and signing up for all these online whatever course they can find just
Hmm.
to give them the credits. And meanwhile, it's nothing that's going to actually teach you anything or expand your skill set. So for me, that's where things like the dry needling, my manual therapy certification, kinesiotaping certification, all things I try
Nice.
to satisfy my requirements with something that's actually going to give me something to be able to use on my patients, and
Nice.
again, to separate us from most other places.
Exactly. And this is something you do full time. You don't have like another gig or anything
Nope,
like
other
that.
than husband and father of two.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my other full-time gig.
I know
But
how
other
that
than
is.
that, no, this is me all day.
Nice. Now, what's one thing in your business that you didn't expect? Like along your journey, your career, what's one thing that you found maybe to either like or not like that you didn't really expect when, you kind of picked this career?
I think, probably again talking about just some of the difficulty that that people have with different insurances and different
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
I think that's important because it's something that you don't kind of expect, and even when you're in physical therapy school, that it's not talked as much about as there's some people that don't have the same access that other people have, and how do we
Hmm.
help them too? And so that's always the struggle, and we're always trying to find ways that how we can help people. So that's probably one. That's always going to be a continuous challenge in healthcare, in any healthcare, as you know.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I think just what fascinates me is just the ability of being able to, there's lots of things. Obviously, as a physical therapist, where someone might have wake up with a kink in their neck, or pull a muscle, or something that seems like no big deal, like I'll just deal with it. And sometimes it is no big deal, and it might just settle down in a couple of days, and sometimes it lingers for weeks or months. And so to me, I mean, my biggest fascination, obviously, like I said, someone hurts themselves, I'm a physical therapist, I'm biased, I want to treat them because I know that
Hmm.
I can help them. I
For
know
sure.
that you know
I'm the same way with
more often
insurance. Yep.
more often than not, I can at least help speed up that process, if not make it better, faster, some type of improvement other than just giving it time and not addressing it. So to me, that's always, we see a lot of injuries that obviously take a little bit of time to rehab. And then one of my favorite, or my amongst my favorite of all of that are people that come in with just a random acute injury and 1 or 2 treatments, and they're back to 100%. And, they don't necessarily, I don't have all of my patients here for 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks. Some patients are only here for 1 or 2 visits because that's all it takes to treat their issue. You have some places and some clinicians, not just physical therapists, that might want to drag treatment out because they're looking at the business side. To me, it's better business, and it will ultimately make me more money is if I'm good at my job and treat people and get them better as quickly as possible, because then they're going to come back to me if they hurt something else, or they're going to tell their neighbor, or they're going to tell their, that's just better business. So selfishly, from a selfish standpoint, I want to fix you quicker. Because to me, that's from a business standpoint, that's just better long-term for everybody. It's better long-term for patients that aren't being dragged along in this treatment. It's better as a clinician because it's just going to be a more sound and well-recognized type of clinic. And, that's it.
Nice. Now, what's the most common injury that you see walk into your office?
Again, varies. Obviously, low back pain is going to be across the board.
Oh, yeah.
The most common injury, in any physical therapy, that's research tells us that that's the most prominent injury. But, I see.
Why do you think that is? Because we're sitting nowadays more?
It's a combination, and there's research study out there that shows that 80% of people in America at some point in their lives will seek some form of professional medical attention for low back pain. That's 4 out of every 5 people at some point in their lives will go to either a doctor, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a massage therapist, somebody to treat their back pain, which tells us that 1, either we're built very poorly, or 2, we're not training the muscles that we are required to have for the sport of life. It's like training. Any athlete is going to do a sport-specific training protocol for their sport, but most people don't have a sport-specific training protocol for the sport of everyday life. And so our core is really the foundation of everything. Our core is involved in every movement we do, every task we do. And if we have that weak core, then our spine is compromised, our low back is compromised. And we're much more prone and likely to injure as a result of it.
So how do you feel about like weightlifting, going to the gym and things like that? Do you think it's definitely important for somebody to move around and
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the worst thing, we have a saying, the worst thing to do is nothing. And I have patients that they're very active their whole lives, and they're kind of, they might be 70, 80-year-old patient that kind of make a comment that says like, oh, like, I'm in the, maybe they came in because they just had a knee replacement and it's chalked up to all the years of running that they did. And it's like, oh, and I asked them, I'm like, well, was it not worth it? Would you have preferred to never have played your sport or done your job or did that activity? And very rarely do I ever get a response of, yeah, I wish I never did that. I wish I just sat on the couch my whole life.
That's true.
But I have plenty of patients. I've had plenty of patients that sat on the couch their whole life. They have way worse issues than everybody else. So
very true.
It's again, worst thing to do is nothing at all. We need to stay active. The important thing is making sure that we're training as smartly as possible. For me, like I said, I joined the powerlifting team when I was 14 years old in high school. And, I was lifting a lot of weight and not with, my coach was the PE teacher and who didn't have any formal background or training, didn't know, really anything about lifting or biomechanics or anatomy or physiology. It was just, get in the gym and put the weight on and lift it. And, that's where most people get into trouble is if you're not understanding why you're doing what you're doing and how to do it safely, that's when we get into trouble. I don't look down upon any type of workouts. There's some people that have opinions of this is good, this is bad. And at the end of the day, sports are sports and activity is activity. It's always going to come with a cost. but that doesn't mean we can't minimize the risk of injury and with doing the right thing to be able to do those things more effectively.
And I'm assuming I think I know the answer, but it'd be even better to do a sport and have you kind of there for like a maintenance type of deal, right?
Yeah, I have, like I said, I have lots of
Yeah,
athletes that come in just continuously. They've already they had an injury, they've met their goals, they're back to full 100% participation,
yeah,
and they still come on a consistent basis for call it a tune up. It's like a car, like you buy a new
exactly.
car, but you're still gonna get an oil change every 3 to 5 thousand miles.
I got to get one right now.
Yeah. So, and what happens when you don't? Parts start to
Exactly.
wear down, and next thing you know, you're spending a lot more money and time on replacing those parts as opposed to, just putting a little oil in there.
Got it, got it. Now, in my field, I always recommend PPO plans, right? No matter what. Um, Even if you think you can't afford it, I'm still going to try to recommend you a PPO because it's always better for the client, right? If you can qualify for it, get a PPO. In your field, what's one procedure that you maybe have seen help people the most?
One
Like, is it the
procedure,
trigger point dry needling? Is it the cupping, the Graston, the tissue healing, the joint healing? What have you seen that you're like, wow, like, yeah, this I like this.
I think it's always a combination. There's no one thing in and of itself. I never just do one thing to somebody. However, we typically start with maybe one or two things. I think the dry needling is definitely a big added
Yeah.
bonus.
Wow.
But in my opinion, again, I'll always revert back to my hands. At the end of the day,
Ah, that makes
feeling
sense.
feeling with our hands and just the so many different things that I can do. That to me is always going to be my best form of treatment. And it's not just from a physical standpoint, even from a psychological standpoint on the patient's side of things. We also have research that shows just being touched has releases chemicals in the body. I mean,
Exactly.
so it's from a patient standpoint, they want someone that's going to put their hands on them.
Hmm.
It's there's a calming effect, there's a confidence effect, of someone that's like, hey, I'm gonna take this body part, this issue of yours, and I'm gonna do something with it. So to me, that's always going to be my bread and butter. But again, it's always going to be a combination. We always like to build on things. So, I'm never, we have another kind of technique. I never want to do the exact same thing, 3 treatments in a row, because then we're not progressing. Something has to either be progressed or added or modified or changed so we
That
can
makes sense.
keep moving forward. If we're just doing the same exact routine, same manual, same exercises, 10 visits in a row, well, to me, it's like, what's the point? You can do that on your own.
Yeah,
Why waste your time coming in to see me for that?
that
So
makes sense.
yeah, so that's how I treat.
So that was great information. Loved it. Now I kind of want to get to know a little bit of where did Mark grow up? Like where'd you come from, Mark?
I was born in New Jersey. Moved here when I was 7 years old,
Nice.
South Florida, Palm Beach Gardens. So I was born in Jersey, raised in Gardens, not far from here, from Wellington, and that's where I grew up. I have 2 older brothers, so we were always active. We were playing sports, beating each other up. There's always 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 things going on. So that always led me to active lifestyle. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 3 years old.
Oh
So
wow.
me, it was always health and fitness and movement were always important to me, just because it's just all I knew. It's all I knew how to do. That's what's kept me healthy and in shape, and for this long, 30 almost 7 years
Yep.
later.
Yep.
So that was my upbringing, and I kind of use that also with with how I treat patients. Coming from a
Wow.
kind of background of I have things going on too. But
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't mean that there's not things we can't do to, nobody would know. Nobody would ever know.
I
If
didn't
I
even
tell
I
them.
didn't even expect it.
Right. So it's to me, it was kind of always like there's always excuses that can be
Hmm.
made, but it behooves us a lot more to save the excuses and get to doing instead. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was me. Like I said, I went to college. The injury got me into my field of athletic training with my undergraduate degree, which took me into I worked for the University of Central Florida football team, as well as the San
Nice.
Diego Chargers. Ultimately, my goal was to always go back to physical therapy school to essentially open up a sports medicine physical therapy clinic, and there you go,
And
USA.
what kind of sports? Nice. I love the logo too.
Yep.
What kind of sports did you play?
I played. I mean, I played a little bit of everything growing up.
Oh
In high
yeah?
school, I
Nice.
power lifted, played football, and wrestled.
Powerlifting, man. I'm trying to do that powerlifting stuff.
I lift
It's
much
hard.
differently now than I did back then.
It's
There's
hard.
yes,
Every time I do those deadlifts, I literally feel a hernia.
there's there's something we might be able to do about that.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you. Now, what's your favorite childhood memory? Just one.
Ooh, favorite childhood memory. I would probably have to say, let's see, probably an RV trip. My entire family. It was crazy because it was not just my family; it was my aunt, uncle, cousins from New Jersey down to Florida, and it was just a cross country RV trip. A lot of people on a small RV, but I still have memories of that bouncing around and being told to sit down. And but that was a lot of fun. And we came down to visit my grandparents, and I think that was ultimately what convinced my parents that they didn't want to wait for retirement to move down here. They wanted to do it sooner than later, which
That makes sense.
I'm happy about. It's kind of hard for me to imagine not growing up here and growing up in New Jersey instead. So that's probably the first thing that comes to mind.
What part of Jersey are you from?
East Brunswick.
Oh, okay. I think I have a few friends from there. Now, what's been the best compliment you ever gotten?
Best compliment I've ever gotten. We're talking about from a professional standpoint. I don't know how many
Whatever,
personal.
whatever you want, whatever you want.
Well, I'll keep it professional. My best compliment, which I think is a silly compliment, is that when people say like, "Wow, like thank you for like," no one's taken the time to explain that to me. When people come
I
in with
know.
issues, I mean, the first thing we do, like I said, is that extensive history taking. I sit there and just talk to people sometimes for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes before I
Yeah,
even have them do anything or touch them. And that's just because we're talking it out, and they're delivering a roadmap to me of what's going on, and I'm explaining to them of everything that is going inside my head, so that we're on the same page. And a lot of clinicians, a lot of doctors don't take the time to do that. It's kind of in and out, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do to you, and if you have questions, maybe I'll answer them, but I like to make sure that everybody is on the same page because, and it seems so silly because it's not something that I'm necessarily making a conscious effort to do. It's
yeah.
just part of my process.
From a
And
helping standpoint,
yeah,
I get it. Yeah,
so that's probably my favorite. And in my mind, the dumbest compliment that I get because it shouldn't be a compliment. That should be the standard. Unfortunately, it's not.
for sure. Now, before you went into physical therapy, did you have any other jobs?
Before I went to before again, I was an athletic trainer, so I was working in the sports world, but that was from
What
college.
about before that?
Before college, I was a cook at CR Chicks in high school.
Really? Wow.
That was where I sharpened my culinary skills,
Wow.
which haven't expanded that much more since then, but I can still make a mean smoky at home.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that. So what, you were a chef pretty much?
I was
Like a cook?
it was a cook. We would cook the pot. They had a couple pasta dishes,
Wow.
sandwiches, the rotisserie chickens we would cut up. So it was like a very light chef light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. What's one of the biggest lessons you learned in that job?
Um,
Like before you found your career job, that kind of, because we kind of grow up and go through experiences, and it kind of teaches us certain things, right? Before we finally land that dream job and we feel like this is our purpose. So
right.
like, whether it was CR chicks or a job before you got into your field, what are like what's like a good lesson for the audience, for the listener, that you learned along your journey before you actually found your purpose?
I think just, and again, it might be cliche, but again, it's just, hard work.
Hmm.
I was very fortunate. I grew up in a home that, my parents worked hard. And, we had everything that we ever needed. Maybe not always wanted, but definitely
Hmm.
always had everything we needed. But, it didn't
Facts.
matter. It was kind of always understood and known that, when we were old enough to be able to get a job, we were going to get a job. And, I started driving. I had to pay for my own health insurance or my own car insurance. That kind of thing. It just taught me those principles of, don't take things for granted. Yes, I had a very fortunate childhood, but it doesn't mean that it just is always going to be handed to you. Like you gotta work hard to continue to get what you want to get. And so I think that was always instilled in me from early on. And that's what I always try to do.
Nice. It's so crazy because I always have these thoughts, like my mom, she worked three jobs all the time and this and that. And like we always, same thing, we always had what we needed, but never really like the extra, right? But now in like my situation is like I do well for myself, right? So I mean, being a single parent and things like that, I actually do come with the fear sometimes that, man, like these kids get everything they want.
Right.
I don't know if I'm like there has to be a cutoff point at some point in their lifetime
Yeah.
where I'm gonna have to,
Look, my kids are 5 and 7 years old, and it's always fun to you know spoil them when you can, and buy them a random toy if But like to me, it's about earning things.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
I think it just teaches you the value of accomplishing that
Make them
earning.
work at 8.
Yeah, chores. Do your chores.
Exactly. All right, I know you got to go, boss. So just one more question.
Sure.
What are three books or movies or podcasts or something that, maybe somebody that wants to jump into your field um can read, listen to, or something like that?
Ooh,
This is
God.
more for like the younger audience, right? 16, 17, maybe looking into getting into
Yeah.
your field.
Obviously the number one thing is going to be anatomy. Everything
Mm,
we do, everything I do is based on anatomy. That's the
that's
foundation of
true.
everything. I had a teacher that said, "Hey, if you know your anatomy, I mean, we go to, I have a, physical therapy school is a doctorate, 3 year postgraduate doctorate program, and obviously we have lots of different classes in a big curriculum. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to if you know your anatomy, you can figure everything else out. Uh,
Hmm.
Now it gets a lot more extensive than that, but ultimately, we are supposed to be the anatomy experts, and the stronger
Mm,
you can go into that with, just the better off and easier and more smooth the rest of your education will be. So, I definitely say get an anatomy book. Um, Otherwise, that's probably first and foremost. I don't know too many other books or don't watch movies where there's a physical therapist. It's hardly ever accurate. Um, Everything they're doing, it's really hard. My wife's a nurse; she can't watch Grey's Anatomy or any of that stuff because she's just yelling at the TV. I'll do the same thing if I see a physical
that's
therapist treating
funny.
a patient. So,
That's
uh,
funny.
so yeah, that would be my suggestion: get an anatomy book and then go find a clinic that will let you do some observation. I have students that come in and do some observation hours. You'll know quickly if it's something that you want to do or not.
Nice, nice. Now, how can where can people find you? How can people find you?
So you can find us. Obviously, we're in Wellington. We have 2 locations. Our main one is in the Whole Foods Clinic on 441. We also have a clinic inside of Palm Beach Polo Club. So you can find us online. Again, USA Sports Medicine. Our website's www.usasportsmedicine.com. And same for Instagram. Um, go online, look at check us out, look at our website. Um, it's you'll see a lot of stuff on there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Blank. It was a pleasure to have you on here. And yeah, we'll be talking soon. All right.
Great.
Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
for having me.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right.
All right, that was awesome, Dr. Mark Blank. Guys, if you need a physical therapist, again, you know where to find them. I'm going to have all his information down below. Don't hesitate to give his office a call. Don't hesitate to give him a call. Like he said, it's going to be a very personalized touch. It's not going to be one of those mill physical therapists like he was talking about. It's going to be very personalized to where, hey, you can actually ask questions and get to know Dr. Blank and his staff. Okay, guys. So on the other note, if you guys need any health insurance, if you guys need help, any questions you need answers to, or if you just want me to review your policy, I'm always here for that. I don't charge anything. A lot of people ask me, how much do I owe you? Listen, you guys don't pay me anything for a policy review or even to find you guys a health plan. Okay, it's totally free on my end. So guys, again, I am the health insurance dad. All my information is down below as well. You can always go to luzanagroup.com and get some more information. Talk soon.